Sometimes God places you in someone's life not because they're good for you, but because you are good for them. You didn't walk into their world by accident. You didn't stumble into that relationship, that friendship, or that environment by chance. You were sent, you were positioned, you were placed by God with intentionality, not to conform, not to compromise, but to reflect. Because there are some people in this world who are so wrapped up in themselves, so consumed with their own image, their own importance, their own desires, that they can't even see the very thing they're missing. They can't see truth. They can't see love. They can't see humility. And so God said, if they can't see it, I'll send it. I'll send someone to reflect what they've forgotten. And that someone was you. See, when someone's caught in narcissism, when they're blinded by pride, by insecurity, masked as superiority, they begin to build a false mirror around themselves. They only want to see what flatters them. They only want to hear what feeds them. They only want to be around people who echo their ego. But God doesn't play into delusion, He disrupts it. And what does God do when He wants to wake someone up? He sends a mirror they didn't ask for. A mirror that reflects His love, His patience, His truth, His sacrifice, His character. That mirror was you. You were placed in their life not to admire their reflection, but to reflect a greater image, the image of the God who sent you. And let me tell you something, reflecting Christ in the presence of someone who only reflects themselves is not easy. It's not glamorous. It's not always rewarded. In fact, most times it's resisted. They may have called you too much, when really you were just walking in too much light for their darkness to handle. They may have said you were overly sensitive when really you were just sensitive to the Holy Spirit and it made them uncomfortable. They may have accused you of being the problem when in reality you were the conviction they couldn't escape. See, when you carry the Spirit of God, you don't even have to speak for someone to feel exposed. Your presence carries weight. Your peace convicts their chaos. Your patience frustrates their manipulation. Your love unmasks their selfishness. Your forgiveness shatters the cycle of shame they hide behind. You were not in their life to mirror them. You were there to mirror Him. And some of you are asking, why did they treat me like that? Why couldn't they value me? Why did they resist everything I gave with love? Because you weren't there to be adored. You were there to be a revelation. And here's what's wild. They might never say thank you. They may never apologize. They may never wake up to what you carried, but that doesn't change the fact that God used you. You were a vessel of divine confrontation, a walking, talking reminder that something real still exists in a world full of fake. You were the standard they pretended they didn't need, but couldn't stop reacting to. And maybe it hurts that they never saw your worth, but don't miss this. They weren't supposed to see you fully. They were supposed to see God through you. You were a reflection of something higher, something better, something freer, something they weren't ready to face. But heaven saw it, God saw it, and just because they rejected the reflection doesn't mean the mirror was broken. It means their vision was distorted. So don't you let the reaction of a narcissist convince you that your light was too dim, your love wasn't enough, or your spirit was too soft. No, you were more than enough, and that's exactly why they couldn't handle you. You were reflecting something their soul wasn't prepared to encounter. God placed you there on purpose, not to become what they are, but to show them what they're not, to reflect what they forgot, to reveal what they refused to face. And whether they changed or not, you did your part. You showed up shining. You were light. You were love. You were the mirror they never knew they needed. And heaven applauded, even if they never did. There are moments in your life where you become the very thing someone else needed, even if they never treated you like it. You were not just a person in their life. You were a lesson, a living, breathing, God-sent wake-up call. But here's the hard truth. Just because someone needed the lesson doesn't mean they were ready to receive it. Just because they were desperate for growth doesn't mean they had the humility to embrace the growth God was offering through you. You walked into their life with a pure heart, good intentions, open hands, and love that was real. You didn't show up with a list of demands. You showed up willing to pour out. You were the kind of person they prayed for in their quiet moments, but didn't have the character to handle in their real ones. And still you gave. Still you stayed. Still you believed. You didn't come to fight, you came to heal. You didn't come to control, you came to care. You didn't come to expose, you came to cover. But they weren't ready. Because people who live in dysfunction, who've made a home out of manipulation and built their identity around dominance, don't know what to do when love walks in without a price tag. They're used to playing games and you brought truth. They're used to earning approval and you offered acceptance. They're used to conditional relationships and you love them unconditionally. And do you know what happens when a person who's drowning in self-absorption meets someone walking in God's freedom? They panic, they sabotage, they reject the very thing they're hungry for. It's not because you weren't enough, it's because you were too much for the version of themselves they were willing to be. You were the lesson, not the punishment, not the curse, not the problem. You were the opportunity for them to step out of their patterns. You were the glimpse of what real connection looks like, what honest love feels like, what God's grace can do when it shows up in human form. You were the mirror to their mess, the contrast to their chaos, the calm to their storm. And here's the kicker: they didn't deserve you. No, they didn't. They didn't deserve the prayers you prayed for them behind closed doors. They didn't deserve the way you forgave them over and over again when they never even said sorry. They didn't deserve the stability you brought to their instability. But grace isn't about deserving, it's about assignment. God sent you not because they had earned the right to have someone like you, but because God, in his mercy, wanted to give them a chance, a shot at better, a glimpse of healing, a moment of clarity, and he wrapped all of that up in you. You with your faith, you with your compassion, you with your soft heart and strong spirit. And if you're sitting here wondering, why did I go through all that for someone who couldn't even say thank you? Let me remind you, Jesus was a lesson too. A lesson most people rejected. He poured out love on people who betrayed him. He healed those who would never follow him. He gave even when people mocked what he gave. So when you feel like your love was wasted, remember, God doesn't waste anything. You planted something even if you never got to see it grow. You taught something even if they pretended they weren't listening. You shifted the atmosphere even if they acted like they didn't notice. Some lessons don't take root right away. Some seeds don't sprout until the soil gets shaken. You may never hear thank you. You may never get closure, but trust me, you were unforgettable, even if they tried to forget you. And one day, when they're sitting in silence trying to figure out why their life feels hollow, your presence will echo in that empty space, not because you want revenge, but because you left impact. You were a lesson of love in a life full of fear. You were a lesson of humility in a heart filled with pride. You were the divine interruption to their destructive cycle. And no matter what it cost you, no matter how it ended, heaven saw you. God backed you. And eternity will prove that you were placed there not to be used, but to be used by God. You were the lesson they didn't deserve, but the one they desperately needed. Sometimes God has to let you get close to the wrong person so he can show you the right reflection. You thought they were there to love you, to protect you, to lift you, to build you, but they were actually the tool God used to reveal what was already inside you. You thought they were a blessing, and when it all fell apart, you thought maybe you were the curse. But let me tell you the truth today, they weren't the blessing. You were. God will sometimes allow the presence of a narcissist in your life not to break you down, but to break open the treasure you didn't even know you were carrying. Because until you've been devalued, you don't realize how valuable you really are. Until someone tries to dim your light, you don't know how bright you can shine. Until someone tries to convince you that you're too much, too emotional, too complicated, too demanding, you don't realize that what they call is actually the exact amount God gave you on purpose. See, you never fully understood your worth until you saw it misunderstood. You never understood your strength until you were told you were weak. You never understood your voice until someone kept trying to silence it. That narcissist didn't validate your worth, they activated it. And they did it by trying to bury it. They manipulated, they gaslit, they twisted your reality, and for a while you questioned yourself. You doubted your instincts, you second-guessed your discernment, but the whole time God was watching. The whole time he was saying, I'm not letting this destroy you, I'm letting this define you. Because sometimes God allows the pressure of being overlooked to reveal how deeply you've undervalued yourself. You kept trying to earn their love. You kept lowering your standards. You kept showing up for someone who never showed up for you. And in the middle of all of that, God whispered something into your soul that the narcissist could never say out loud. You are already enough. You are already chosen. You are already worthy. And that's the part they hated the most. Not your flaws, not your weakness, not your moments of confusion. No, what irritated them was the glory on your life. It was your joy that didn't depend on them. It was the peace you carried that didn't make sense in the chaos. It was your ability to still love after being lied to, still pray after being betrayed, still give when all they did was take. They saw your light. Instead of celebrating it, they tried to cage it, because deep down, your light exposed what they lacked. Your humility revealed their arrogance. Your consistency made their games look like what they were, childish distractions. You were the real thing, and they didn't know how to handle real. But God did. God knew exactly what he was doing when he let you walk through that. He knew it would hurt. He knew you'd cry. He knew you'd wonder if love was even real anymore. But he also knew that on the other side of it, you'd find yourself again. The real you, the you that doesn't settle, the you that doesn't shrink, the you that doesn't chase people who don't know how to cherish you. You see, the narcissist was never the reward. They were the reveal. They showed you who you are by trying to convince you you weren't. And every time they tried to make you small, it pushed you closer to the God who made you big. Every time they lied to you, it made you lean more into the truth. Every time they tried to break you, they accidentally built a version of you that now knows who you are. You are fearfully and wonderfully made. You are loved without conditions. You are seen, chosen, and called. And nothing, not even the lies of someone who couldn't love you right, can take that away. So no, they didn't ruin you. They revealed you. They didn't take your worth. They just woke it up. God used it all. Every tear, every prayer, every confusing moment. And now, on the other side of it, you don't just know who they were, you know who you are, and that is the real victory. You thought you were supposed to build a life there. You thought that connection was permanent. You gave your heart, your time, your energy, and you stayed longer than you should have because you believed that staying meant loving. You confused loyalty with calling. You mistook your assignment for your identity. But let me tell you something that will break chains off your soul. You were never meant to stay. You were sent to shift. God didn't place you in their life so you could lose yours. He didn't send you into that space so you could shrink yourself into silence, bury your worth under their insecurity, or trade your peace for their approval. You were sent not to sit, not to settle, not to stay, but to shift the atmosphere, shift the pattern, shift the narrative, shift the spiritual temperature of that room. God said, I'm placing you here, not because it's comfortable, but because it's strategic. Because when you walk into this space, you bring me with you. And when I show up, things have to move. You weren't just a person. You were a move of God. You carried the shift. That's why the narcissist reacted to you the way they did. That's why it always felt like warfare, because you were disrupting something that was deeply rooted. You were interrupting cycles. You were breaking generational patterns. You were unraveling manipulative systems that had gone unchallenged for years. And let me tell you something, the enemy never fights what doesn't threaten him. The resistance you felt wasn't rejection, it was confirmation. Confirmation that your presence was doing something in the spirit they couldn't explain. Confirmation that you were making cracks in the structure of their control. You weren't just loving them, you were exposing their fear. You weren't just helping, you were healing by simply being who you are. But here's where it gets painful. You thought your job was to stay and fix it. You thought if I just love harder, if I just pray more, if I just stay a little longer, they'll change. But baby, let me tell you the truth. You were never meant to be the fixer. You were meant to be the flame. The fire that sets a new standard, the spark that ignites something they've never seen before. You were sent not to become part of the dysfunction, but to shift it with the authority God placed inside you. And once your assignment was done, once you had planted the seed, once you had disturbed the darkness, once you had spoken truth where lies had lived, your time was up. But because your heart is so big, because you love so deeply, you stayed hoping something would shift in them, not realizing you were the shift. And the longer you stayed in a place you weren't called to remain, the more you started to lose yourself. The light that was supposed to shine started to dim. The voice that used to speak boldly started to tremble. The confidence you had in God's calling began to erode under the weight of someone else's dysfunction. That's when God had to step in and pull you out, not because you failed, but because you finished. You did what you were called to do. You shifted what you were meant to shift. You obeyed, you planted, you gave. And now it's time to go. You're not walking away in defeat. You're walking away in release. Release from responsibility that was never yours. Release from the guilt of leaving someone you couldn't save. Release from the lie that your love wasn't enough, when in truth, it was more than enough, and that's why they couldn't handle it. Hear me clearly. You don't need to stay to prove your worth. You don't need to stay to validate your love. You don't need to stay to fix what only God can heal. You were on assignment, and now it's complete. So stop mourning the exit. Stop doubting the departure. Stop letting your soul stay in rooms your spirit has already left. God says, you did what I asked. You shifted what I sent you to shift. Now move forward. Walk free. Step into the new thing. Because I've got greater places for you. I've got people who won't just take from you, they'll pour back into you. I've got environments that don't just tolerate your light, they celebrate it. You were never meant to stay, you were sent to shift, and now it's your time to soar.